This is the first of 4 short talks to show you how to use your iPad to annotate presentations. Annotating during your presentation is a great way of interacting with the audience. It really engages them much better. It's easier to be able to identify abnormalities and areas of anatomy on images, and it's easier to do using the iPad either with a stylus or with your finger than it is trying to use the mouse and a similar technique on a laptop. There are 4 different ways you can connect your iPad in order to be able to annotate on your lectures, and I'm going to go over these in turn. Which you choose of these are going to depend on a number of things, including whether you only want to run iPad-only apps or you want to be able to control programs that are available on your PC, for example, such as Excel, that may not be displayable on your iPad. It's going to depend on the security settings at places that you choose to present at, as well as the type of hardware that you'll have available or you're willing to purchase. Some of them are easier than others, so your level of technological expertise clearly comes to play with this. I think it's kind of good to have your one standard plan and then a backup plan for using if connections don't work. Conventionally in lectures, you have a computer on the podium, be it a Mac or a PC, connected via either an HDMI or a VGA cable to the LCD projector. We can instead directly hardwire the iPad via a dongle to that cable to the projector. Again, this could either be a VGA or an HDMI connection, depending on the type of projector. In this way, whatever you're showing on your iPad is going to project out to the audience. In the second type of connection, you will have an app showing whatever images or slides that you want to project on your iPad, and that will project via the Wi-Fi network to the computer, which is then attached to the projector as before. And so whatever you're showing on your iPad will also show on this computer here on the podium, and hence to the audience. In the third type of connection, whatever you're showing on your computer that's on the podium, be it PowerPoint, Keynote, or in fact any other program, is being projected to the audience, again via the hardwire cable. But in this case, what the iPad is doing is directly controlling that computer and allowing you to annotate on top of whatever's being projected. The final type of connection allows you to display images or lectures on your iPad that then gets transmitted via the Wi-Fi network to the cloud, and then that gets transmitted down from the cloud directly to the laptop, which is connected to the web. And then again, same as before, that podium computer is connected to the projector and the audience sees that. And there's only certain apps that will do this. We're going to go over the pros and cons of each of these different methods in turn. So the easiest is to hardwire effectively your iPad to the projector. This is a pretty painless procedure, and you can show anything that you're showing on your iPad directly to the projector. You do need to purchase a $30 dongle or a connector. You are tied to standing behind the podium pretty much unless you have a very long cable, and so effectively only you and not your students can annotate on the iPad. What about when your iPad is transmitting whatever's on the screen to the computer? Well, again, anything that you are showing on your iPad can be transmitted. It is wireless, so you can get out from behind the podium. For those of us who don't like to be tied to podium-based talks, this is much more interactive with the audience. You can also give your iPad to the audience to be able to add their annotations. But you do have to get your presentation either via email or cloud onto the iPad before you start. You're limited to the apps available on the iPads. You can't use just anything you have on your computer. And there can be some technical issues. For example, if you have problems with bandwidth and you have a high resolution image such as a chest x-ray or mammogram you're trying to show, it can degrade the images. And there can be issues with Wi-Fi security. How about when your laptop is actually controlling the presentation that's running on your laptop? Well, anything you can run on your laptop, whether it's Excel, Word, a website, PowerPoint, Keynote, etc., can be run and annotated directly using the iPad. The connections tend to be generally easier in my experience, and we also, as we'll talk about in a later talk, we can have multiple users at once connecting to your laptop. It does use the native resolution of the laptop and the projector rather than relying on the bandwidth. However, this multi-user interface can cause issues, as we'll talk about, and there is the cost of the program to run on the laptop itself, and these tend to be more expensive than iPad apps. So the rest of this talk, what I'm going to speak about is how you project your iPad through a directly wired connection. This is an example of the connector you can use to attach your iPad to the projector. It comes in a couple of versions, a VGA version and an HDMI version, depending on what comes out of your projector. And I believe there are some which combine both, are a little more expensive. This is commonly called a dongle. So this is the end here that will connect to the projector, and then this comes in a couple of different versions of the connected port, depending on what age your iPad is. So this is the Lightning connector that is of the, I think it's iPad 3 and upwards. The older versions of iPad use the old wider 10-pin connector, so you have to make sure that you get the right connector for your iPad. And then this is very straightforward. Plug it into your iPad, plug it into the cable, and then you're pretty much good to go. The transmission seems to be pretty seamless. If you are lecturing using this, what kind of apps can you use to connect? Well, I'm going to talk about the 4 ones I tend to use most. The one that I use most of the time is PowerPoint. The app for the iPad is free. If you are a Keynote user, then you can use Keynote. Over these in more detail in a moment. And 2 others to think about are SlideShark and 2Screens. So let's look first of all at the PowerPoint app. You can actually make and edit slides using the app. You upload them either via the cloud, such as using something like Dropbox, or via emailing them to yourself. It keeps the formatting if you are a PowerPoint user on either Mac or PC. Pretty good annotation tools. You can go into presenter view so you can see your notes from the slide, and it will also include animations and movies. And as I said, this is a free app, so this is a pretty easy way to do this. Keynote works very similarly. Again, you can make and edit slides, you upload them by email or the cloud. If you are a Keynote Mac user, then this is probably what I'd recommend. If you are a PowerPoint user, however, it does change the formatting, and that gets to be kind of irritating. Again, you can use presenter view, include animations and movies if you're moving from Keynote, and it does have a basic set of annotations. Cost $10, so it's not an unreasonably priced program. Until recently, I would have recommended SlideShark more. What this does is you upload your PowerPoint slides via the web from your laptop. It keeps all your speaker notes, it does keep animations and movies, but it doesn't allow you to edit, and then you just project them from there. This was pretty good until recently, but now the free edition only allows you to have 40 slides, and after that it gets pretty expensive. So take a look if you want. I, at the moment, don't see any great advantages of this app. The final one to think about keeping, however, is an app called 2Screens. This does not allow you to edit and you're best loading any lectures as PDFs. It doesn't allow animations and movies to come in, but it does have this broadcasting function that we will talk about in the final set of these movies. It does allow you to have multiple presentations loaded at any one time that you can go between, which is nice. And the thing that I really like it for is you can have sets of image folders and hierarchical folders. So I have a whole 8,000 image database sitting on my iPad that I can show anytime via 2Screens. And unlike the iPad basic photo album library, it keeps the names on those images. And so for radiology, we don't just want 8,000 images that don't say what they are. We want to be able to search and find the ones we are. So that's nice to use for that. It's also extremely cheap. So this is worth keeping as a secondary type of program on your iPad. In the next 3 movies, we're going to talk about the non-wired connections of iPad to your Podium computer.